This episode could have gone in several ways. Being that it's a landmark episode, it could have been a clip show. I was also trying to get an interview with several overseas people, but I've called an audible in honour of a man who was one of the most influential people in all of pro wrestling ever. Of course, I'm talking about Hulk Hogan. As of this recording, it has been barely a bunch of hours since I learned of his passing. Hogan's good friend Eric Bischoff had three choices when tasked with competing with the WWF, which is now the WWE. He always knew his show could be either less than, greater than, or different than. He chose the third option. Now, with this and every other episode of If You See Kayfabe, I've always vowed to follow option 3. I'll be different than. So my tribute to Hulk Hogan will not be the standard fare. Now, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Every other video asks you to do, but please do mine first. G'day wrestling mates, welcome to episode 50 of If You See Kayfabe. I'm your wrestling mate from down under. I'm Southern Joe. Now, what was going to be episode 50 originally will now be episode 51, and it'll be with an aspiring American man training to be a pro wrestler who already has a vast resume of life experiences. Now, I'm looking forward to interviewing my newest wrestling mate this weekend as we record. However, it is time to do a tribute show to Hulk Hogan. Pardon me, one of the greats of pro wrestling. My personal thoughts will be at the end of this episode, so please watch till the end. Now, you're on YouTube, on streaming services, and anywhere else where you can see videos. They are going to document Hogan's life in the usual way. What I intend to show here is how I myself came across Hulk Hogan and what it was like as an Aussie wrestling fan to watch the rise of Hulkamania in conjunction with the rise of pro wrestling to the giddy heights it enjoys today. I hope also to find out if my journey to discover Hulk Hogan lines up with other Aussies as well as other non-USA wrestling fans. Now, please add your memories in the comments section below. You see, our wrestling treats went dark here after the American-led World Championship Wrestling that was here in Australia, not the Ted Turner-inspired WCW, and when it was taken off the air from the Channel 9 network in 1978. Now, between that time until the mid-80s, there was no wrestling to be had, except for a few shopping centre exhibition matches and some clubs that I didn't know about. Because remember, kids, no internet or social media were around back then. How did we survive? I was always a casual fan of the first 4 Rocky movies. Rocky 4 is my favourite, but in this case, Rocky 3 is the poignant movie here because of 2 individuals. Mr. T played Clubber Lang, a tough street fighter who calls out Rocky and pummels him. Mr. T was already a star even to us Aussies, as he starred in the hit TV series The A-Team. Now, then there was the guy playing the larger-than-life wrestler, Thunderlips, and that was another thing altogether. That was 1983, and the first time that this little Aussie saw Hulk Hogan. Remember, you guys in the USA may have already seen him in Memphis, or in Florida, or in the AWA as Terry Boulder, Sterling Golden, Super Destroyer, or an early version of Hulk Hogan. To us, it was some big blonde bloke throwing Rocky Balboa around and then posing for pictures afterwards as part of a charity match during that movie of Rocky 3. Now, a few months later in 1984, there was a new female singer at that time named Cyndi Lauper. She was dressed in bright colours, It was very funky, very different, and had a hit song with Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Now, here in Australia, we were told that the big fat guy playing her dad in the music video for this song was her real father. It was, in fact, Captain Lou Albano. But then she accepts the Grammy for Best New Artist in February 1985, and she strides up on stage with this big blonde bloke standing behind her. Now, she doesn't mention him by name, but someone here in Australia who obviously didn't do very good research said that that big blonde bloke was her bodyguard. But even then, I felt that this big dude had a presence about him. Our Network 10 here in Australia then soon advertised a special wrestling event called WrestleMania. American wrestling on primetime TV? Oh, I had to check that out. I had never seen any of the guys on that card before, except for Andre the Giant. He was already a worldwide sensation and been to Australia a few times. At the start of the show, they did a rundown of the card. Now, this is how I remembered the headline act. It was two bad guys. There was a Scottish punk named Piper and some muscle guy named Orndorff. And they were taking on Mr. T and, hey, look! There's Cyndi Lauper's bodyguard. What's his name? Hulk Hogan? And he's world champ already. Gee, he's done well for himself. Now, sidebar here. Everyone looked huge here. And it surprised me because I thought Mr. T was supposed to be this huge, imposing figure. I mean, that's how he's portrayed on the A-Team. But he was not only the smallest man in this main event, he was also most gassed at the end. Go like this. Yet Hogan was just there, no gassed at all, and could cut promo to the end of time. From that event, we started getting WWF Superstar TV tapings every week. It was on late night on a Tuesday. Its time would shift now and then, but I had a VCR luckily. Hogan didn't appear on the tapings much, except for some promos. Then the WWF started doing Saturday night's main event, of which we'd get one or two episodes here in Australia. One that was notable here was Hogan getting his ribs crushed by King Kong Bundy. He then appeared on a Superstars taping against what was promised to be a 300-pound plus wrestler, who turned out to be enhancement talent Rusty Brooks. Now, this was Hogan's kayfabe test of his taped-up ribs. It was also the first time that I remember hearing the Real American theme. So the funny thing was, they played it from the start, where it's got that slow build-up, and it flummoxed the crowd. They only hit fever pitch when Hogan actually arrived. Now, this, of course, led to the cage match with Bundy at WrestleMania 2, and at least here, he entered the right way as far as its theme music went. Started right from the first real guitar riff. Now, by this time, I was getting wrestling magazines when I could, and they were primarily the Apter mags. Through this, I discovered other champions, such as Ric Flair. He was supposed to be the real world champion, something the WWF didn't take advantage of until they signed Flair in 1991. And even then, they bumbled that potential monster feud because hardcore WWF fans didn't know who Ric Flair was. I reckon Hogan's finest work was in making the feud of the century work by selling the build-up to what would have been a physically better-looking feud if done 5 years prior. Now, that was the feud with the newly minted heel Andre. The classic Piper's Pit series were excellent, and they established Andre as a heel and set up the WrestleMania 3 main event. Now go to this clip on my channel to see that final setup before WrestleMania 3. Once Hulk Hogan lost the title the first time, he seemed to be on and off the wrestling radar. And I know he was off making movies, but I never saw any of them. Never had an interest to see them. His formation of the MegaPowers with rising superstar Randy Macho Man Savage was also epic. Ooh, yeah. Now, I never fully saw his match where he put the Ultimate Warrior over, but as you can see here, he still finished strong for himself by not laying down for a decisive 3 count. As much as Hogan was the rocket ship to launch modern pro wrestling into the stratosphere, he was as protective of his legacy, more so than just about any other star before or after him. This so-called passing of the torch in this section epitomizes this trope. Now, the next time I heard about Hogan was when we were getting trickles of news about the steroid scandal that the WWF was embroiled in. We didn't get much coverage that I can remember here in Australia. Remember, this tribute is based on what I saw of Hogan as his life and times progressed. By the mid-90s, we were starting to get some international versions of WWF and even some WCW TV tapings. I still got the odd magazine, but not as many as before due to a combination of being married with a child by that time and not as many mags coming into the country as before because the price had skyrocketed. Somehow I had heard about Hogan joining WCW, but that was probably because it was still mainstream sporting news. Hogan also took what I believe to be the biggest gamble in his career ever at the WCW 1996 pay-per-view called Bash at the Beach. This was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They were slated for the main event to face Lex Luger, Sting, and Randy Macho Man Savage. Hall and Nash had a third man, but didn't bring him out straight away. Now, during the match, Sting was stretched out of the arena to create the illusion that when Hogan came out, it wasn't 100% obvious which side he'd be on. Now, we all know that he leg drops Savage, and he is the third man, and the NWO is formed. As far as merch goes, Hogan's Hulkamania and NWO t-shirts have been amongst the all-time great sellers of merch. Hogan toured Australia in 2009, and I wish I could have gone to a show, but couldn't. The next time I saw Hogan was him debuting in TNA. He said he was taking over and getting rid of the 6-sided ring. I disagreed at the time because I thought the 6-sided ring was TNA's point of difference. With Hogan, Bischoff, Flair, and heaps of others, along with all the TNA originals, I believe that they had a roster that should have given the WWE a run for their money. It's funny how TNA never reached their full potential. Hogan's feud with Aces and Eights, to me, is the most underrated faction and feud in all of wrestling. I know many people also focus on his many faults, and I'm not going to litigate them here one way or another. But here's my personal opinion of Terry Bollea, the man who became Hulk Hogan. If you troll the internet, you can find an equal amount of testimony that Hogan was a good person as well as a bad person. Which was he? Well, any time I've seen him in an interview where he's just chilled and being himself, he always came across as charismatic and charming. When he was chilling, he turned the dial up further than anyone else could. Hogan's stories over the last few years, well, you've heard all of them. I still believe he had onset of dementia, even though no one said it. I don't think he was ever stupid enough to think that people will believe whatever he says just because it's Hulk. The saddest part is the poor reception he copped in his last WWE appearance when Raw debuted on Netflix. Now, did he deserve such a reception? Well, that's for you to judge. Personally, unless it's in kayfabe, I'd rather think that I would have shown some reverence for the man who helped build the monolith that the WWE and wrestling in general is today, rather than booing. Could the WWE become a bit as big without Hulkamania? Well, doubt. Could someone else have played Hulk's part in WrestleMania and the rise of WWF and WWE? Well, if you can name that person, let me know in the comments below. Much has been made of Hogan's limited skill set, but that could be said of Bruno Sammartino, who was a brawler, superstar Billy Graham, and even Stone Cold Steve Austin. Out of all the great champs since 1980, I can only think of Harley Race, Bret Hart, and Ric Flair, who would be noted actual grapplers. But no one was on Hogan's level draw-wise. Now, I enjoyed some of Hogan's matches, and most of them were okay. But I reckon if Hogan had his time back, he would have chose a different finisher that wouldn't have wrecked his neck and spine. But apart from that, all I can say is Hulk Hogan, rest in peace. Rest in peace, brother. Thank you for all you did. It's a pity that you didn't, that your mind wasn't in the right frame to conduct yourself better. And yeah, you had your faults, but who of us can say we don't have any faults? It looks like he did more good than bad, but the internet's this weird place where everyone thinks they're perfect enough to just crap on somebody that does a bit of bad. And I thought it was only in Australia where we had what's called the tall poppy syndrome, but that seems to be something that's worldwide. Either way, rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. These last couple of moments are just extra bits I thought of. This has been your wrestling mate from Down Under, Southern Joe, and this is Hooroo.